But if you want to get the most out of your Deus Ii or other machines, learn it. Really learn in depth what that machine's doing and how to use it, and you will get a lot more targets out of that ground. Hello everyone, welcome back to English History. As you know, I've had the Deus Ii now for a couple of months, just before Christmas. It's exactly like a Deus, but not like a Deus. The tones are slightly different, the way because it's multi-frequency, the way the signals come through. It looks like a Deus, it performs different to a Deus. So there's a bit of a learning curve with it if you come from Deus 1 to going over to the Deus 2. So it's took me a while to, I thought when I got it, I'll just put the old Deus 1 programs into the Deus 2, it'd be the same, I'm just using multi-frequency. It is very similar, but there's some, because I notice every little tiny little difference, it's took me a bit longer to come up with it. I've had to tweak it a bit more and do some changes. What you've got to learn, same with any machine, if you just go out and get someone's settings, say if you just put my settings in and use that for everywhere, it will be good, but on some land it just won't work and you're going to have to try a different program. But the best thing for anybody who's got any machine, but I'm talking about Deus 2 now, is understand what all the different segments are. Like when you're changing reactivity, what effect does that have? The first thing, which is what happens with Deus 1 as well, if you change reactivity, it will automatically reset the silencer, so you have to go back into that and put it to where you want it to be. I don't know why it does that. That's a bit crazy, really. Maybe it's because it's putting it back to the silencer, which is more stable. So if someone's mess with it, it's not going to blow their head off. But the more experienced you are, the more you'll understand why you're changing things. So it'd be nice if that didn't have that feature for me. It'd be nice if it just, when you change the silencer, it stayed there, no matter if you change the reactivity and stuff. But yeah, the point is, I'm trying to get to, any machine you get, we're talking about the Deus 2 now, you get the Deus 2, you can put, when you first use it, put the simple settings in. General mode's quite easy to understand, it's stable, it's got a ground reduction on it, so it's not as chirpy. So to start with, just get in your general mode, start to learn the machine, understand the signals, etc, etc. You know, when you start to get used to it, have a play. Don't worry about having a play with the Deus 2 and the Deus 1, but with the Deus 2, you can't go wrong. You can wrong in the field and you can put the wrong settings in, but if you're doing it and it's all gone pear-shaped, like, oh, what do I do? Turn it off, turn it on, it will go back to how it was before you even started messing. So the only time it saves anything is when you go to the programs and save it as a new program. So then anything that you've changed throughout the day then will be saved. But you can just, if you're doing something and you're going wrong, oh no, I've messed it up, turn it off, turn it on, and you're back to where you started. So you haven't got to worry about that. But you need to learn when you're out in the field how the machine performs. So we're getting to the point now where programs. I've come up with a program that's absolutely, for me, I'm enjoying it, and I'll tweak it to suit the field. I went out yesterday on a field that had been worked. It's been rallied the day before. We went back there. So it was quiet, and I needed to understand the settings and understand what the machine was telling me. And it was, I was going for the stuff that people were missing, the small stuff. And the way I had it set before, from iron to the small stuff where I changed the tone breaks, there was a difference, but not enough for it to stand out. So from me going there yesterday and having a bit more of a tweak, I've come up with the settings now, which I think are brilliant for me. You've got no discrimination. Well, I'll come back to that. You've got no discrimination, minus 6.4. And you've got a 5-tone, which is really a 4-tone, because you make the second tone an iron audio. So you're running your machine open. So your machine's got this, the fastest it can run, it hasn't got to process too many things. As soon as you start adding discrimination, the higher you go with your disc, the more it's going to mask out targets, and the more the metal detector's got to process it. Talking molecules and tiny little bits of gains, but them little gains can make all the difference in the field. Going back to the discrimination, minus 6.4. So say just put my program in, minus 6.4, you're out metal detecting, you're on that field. If the field's not too noisy, not too mineralised, not too much background chatter, leave it at minus 6.4. You can hear everything that's going on in the ground. But if you're on the field and you're going along and you're just going, oh my God, it's just blah, 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 you can get rid of it. You can bring the discrimination up. Don't go too high, because like I just said, you'll be masking out good targets. But just bring it up, just so the ground noise, the minerals, the pottery, and all the bits and bobs that are giving you all them little tiny chirps, bring your disc up. I normally settle, well, it depends on the field, but I settle about minus 3.5, minus 4, minus 3, something like that. And then you can still get a little murmur. You still know that you're running very open. You're hearing nearly everything in the ground. You're just not hearing all the stuff that you don't need to be listening to. It's not the main thing you want. Can't keep going in. There's so much in depth you can cram into somebody's head, but you don't want to confuse it too much. Every little bleep that the Deus gives you it's not falsing. It's telling you exactly what's going on in the ground. The only time it will false is through EMI, when you get the beep, beep, beep. But when you've got, just constant beeping, which is from electric fences, stuff like that, or from overhead pylons, all the other signals are telling you something in the ground. So if you're going across a field, it's quiet, you're detecting, and also you start to get the ground minerals starts coming through. That's a sign of occupation, that there's people been on that field. It could be an old settlement. It could be like you're coming into all bits of pottery and brickwork and stuff like that. So it's an indication that you're on something that you've been looking for. So if you just crank up the discrimination then because it's making too much noise and eliminate it, or if you do that before you even get on the field, you're never going to know when you're walking across an area that's worth detecting. That's got the main area where the occupation has been, where there could be all the coins and random losses, etc. So you want to have it as open as you can without discriminating the small. Definitely want to hear iron. You definitely want to hear the boot nails and stuff like that. But sometimes you can get into an area of mineralisation which could indicate that there's habitation there and it hasn't got too much iron. So if you've eliminated too much from the minus 6.4 numbers up, I hope you keep it up with me here. If you've done it too much, you won't hear that mineralisation in the ground, which could be pottery and brickwork and tiles and all sorts. So you need to run it as open as you can deal with. When you first get the machine, you won't want it to be open too much, which is fair enough, isn't it? The more you use it, the more you can drop it, the more you get used to it, and the better your detecting is going to become. But it's not a race. You haven't got to run it flat out. As soon as you get the Deus Ii, put these settings, running it flat out, and you're just going to not like the detecting. That's why when Steve Elliott, he's from South Africa, he just got the Deus and he wanted to go out, he wanted to have an enjoyable day's detecting without too much falsing and that. So I come up with the Deep SE program, which is nice, stable. It's running at 4 to 14 kilohertz, I believe. So it's not with the sensitive programs, etc., that run 4 to 40 kilohertz. Obviously, you're running the higher kilohertz, so it's going to be more chirpy because you're listening to the specs of stuff. When you're using just the lower kilohertz, 4 to 14, or you can go up to 4 to 24, which starts to get a little bit more chirpy. But when you're using the lower kilohertz, they're not as sensitive to the tiny specs, the tiny bits of mineralisation, etc. Which is, so the lower kilohertz are brilliant for a stable search and going for the deep targets, but you're not as sensitive and you're not going to pick up some of the tiny specks, which on a prime bit of land you want to listen to. You want to be hearing them tiny little bits, and you want to be sniffing in between it all and getting all the best bits. Like, but it's a case of just use the machine. You could use the Deep SE mode. You don't have to use my program. Use any program, like, but go over a more stable program, lower kilohertz. Have a little bit more discrimination on it. Another thing, if where was I going then? Yeah. If you're going across the field, you're metal detecting, you've got your settings in. I've said this to a few people, and it has helped them. Say if you're in a deep mode, or if you're in some settings, you've got the reactivity at 1.5 or 1. Your sensitivity is right up, your audio response is right up, which is going to get you loads of depth, but you're looking at everything. Imagine that ray, every sweep you're doing, you're looking deep as you can go, looking at every target in the ground. When there's not that much habitation, it's not that noisy, brilliant. But if you start to get an area, there's a few signals under your coil, a few targets under your coil, instead of it going beep, beep, you're going to get beep, 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 you're going to get different signals. Same as any machine. This isn't just the Deus Ii. I'm talking about the Deus Ii now at the minute, so I don't want you to think that I'm talking about the Deus Ii only, and it's too complicated, too sensitive, to this, to that. This is what you want. So if you're running it in a deep mode and all the signals are coming through and it's starting to blurt out and it can't make its mind up decisively on the targets, it's because you've got it too open. So speed up the reactivity a little bit, drop the sensitivity back a little bit. Don't try and run it too flat out. And then your targets, and instead of being merged in, if there's like 5 or 6 targets under the coil, if you speed it up a little bit and drop the sensitivity, it's got more chance of looking at what's going on in the ground. You're going to get the beep, 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 beep. It's more decisive targets. So only run it as flat out as you can on the ground that you're on. Ooh, that was a lot of waffle, weren't it? Well, I'll just quickly go through the settings while I'm sat here, just looking at it, talking, and if there's anything I can see that I'm going over and I can explain for you to try and make it a bit more easy for you to understand, we do that. And then after, I'll just go through my settings. Let me just turn that down. Yeah, so as I'll go through the settings now as I'm looking at them on my screen, and as I go through it, if there's any settings or little bits that I think might help for me to explain for you, so how they work and for you to understand it, I'll do that. And then after, I'll do a camera view down and I'll just go through the settings, and you can just pop them into your control and give it a whirl. But these are going to be more sensitive. But even with these with this program, do what I've already just mentioned. If you're going out and it's too noisy, bring the discrimination up a bit, drop the sensitivity just a little bit, speed up the reactivity. But if you're going out and it's doing the opposite and it's not that noisy, and you can cope with it being a bit more noisy, drop the discrimination, up the sensitivity, up the reactivity, drop the silencer. There's loads of different things that you can tweak, which I love. I absolutely love being able to tweak these machines like I can to suit the field on that day. You could go on a field on one day, dry as a bone, using certain settings. Oh yes, this is the settings I'm going to save these and use these on this field every day. You go there the next day, there's been a thunderstorm, a lot of rain, or the conditions have changed. It could be really sparky. You might have to adjust it again. So yes, the Deus is simple to use. You can turn it on. You can choose a program, general, sensitive, deep, relic, all different modes. They're all finely tuned brilliantly off the bat. So it's a simple machine to use if you don't want to tweak. But if you want to get the most out of your Deus II or other machines, learn it. Really learn in depth what that machine's doing and how to use it. And you will get a lot more targets out of that ground. Okay, and so first of all, I'm going to look at the Sid Pro, and we're going into menu. We start off with the discrimination. We've got it at -6.4. The minus numbers. Okay. From 0 up to about 6, 7, 8 is your iron. Below 0, you start to get in towards the mineralisation, pottery, stuff like that. So the lower you got it, -6.4, you hear everything. And I would suggest that you just tweak that up a little bit if it's driving you mad. just to stabilise the machine. We're going to the expert and we're using a 5-tone, as I mentioned earlier. The first tone is your ground noise below 0. And that's going to be set at a tone of tone pitch of 100. And then you've got the second tone. Sorry, let's go into that. And the second tone is set from wherever your discrimination goes. Say if you set it at -4, so it goes from -4 up to 8, and that is your iron tone of 150. And that's all your small nails. So you've got your grain noise below, which is a 100 pitch, tone pitch of 100. Then you've got your iron tone, which is from where you finish your discrimination up to 08 of 150. Then you've got your next tone from 08 up to 36, which is I've set that at 450, and that just comes through nicely. It's a nice pitch, but it's enough for you to, if you don't want to dig below 36, which is a lot of tiny little specks, you don't have to dig them. You don't have to dig anything. You know what I mean? So you've got the ground tone and the iron tone are virtually the same. This is don't dig. You haven't got to dig them, but it's just information in your ears to know that you're going over areas that could have good targets and habitation and stuff like that. Then you've got your first good tone, which is a tone pitch of 450, which is from the end of nails 08 up to 36. A lot of small targets. You can ignore them if you want. It's up to you. But you could miss some tiny bits of gold and tiny little artifacts and stuff like that. So you can be selective with that. You could, if you're going across a park, say, which is full of tiny bits of foil and just driving you mad, you can think, oh no, I'm not going to dig them. The first good set of tones from 08 to 36, because that's just going to be tiny specks. You could miss tiny bits of gold. So this is down to you. If you want to leave it, you leave it, but at your own peril. Okay, so that's the first time. But the way I've set it up, it really does work well. In your ears, you haven't got to keep looking at the screen. You're going along, you've got the brr, 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 then you've got the whoo, 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 whoo. If you're on a crap area, that whoo, whoo, whoo. The first good mid-tone, you can think, you just carry on detecting. You don't want to dig it on certain land. Then as you're going along, you've got the other two, you've got the mid-tone and high tone. As soon as you're going along, whip, 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 it grabs your attention. Oh, there's a target. And then you've got the big silvers, which is whip, 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 screaming at you. So you could put this program in, put it in your pocket, and you wouldn't even have to look at the numbers because it's all there in your ears, which is why this program works now. For me, it might not work for you. It might work for you, I don't know. Okay, and so the next tone is from 36 to 75, which is a tone pitch of 665, which is a fairly high tone, and it's going to grab your attention. It's hard to say where to set that. I've set it at 75, so after 75, it's definitely going to be the bigger targets, big silver stuff like that, hopefully. And below 75 is probably going to be from your hammered pennies down to your cut quarters. So that's why I've picked 75. I've upped it a bit just so the separation. That might change, but at the minute that's what I found works well. So the first two tones you don't dig, up to 08, which is an iron tone. Then you've got your first good tone, which is a low mid tone, which is your small targets. Dig or don't dig, it's up to you. Then you've got your mid tone, which is a digger, and your high tone, which is a digger. You definitely dig everything in the mid and high tones. But your low mid tone, you can leave at your own peril. It's up to you. You could miss some good targets. Coke finishes about 26, 25, 26, 23 to 25. But you know, there's a little tiny. You've got to have a bit of allowance there. But anything above 26, 27 is worth digging, especially if you're on prime land. Okay, let's go back out of that. Then that's the tones and tone breaks. Bottle caps off. Oh shit, where am I? Bottle caps 0. Notch 23 to 25 if you want it on. I've been using it on. I've been using notch and not using notch, and to be honest, what you have to worry about by putting notch in is you're adding a bit more of a processing feature that your machine's got to process. So is it going to slow the recovery and processing down on your machine in amongst the good targets? I haven't noticed a lot of difference. It needs to obviously be 6 months, 12 months down the line when you give it a good bashing, a good test. But at the minute, you can have the notch on, and it's very little noticeable difference. That could be different on a mega Roman site, which I haven't been on with the Deus Ii yet, which I'd love to get on a proper medieval site, Roman site, where you've got to really work. But so far, on all the detecting I've done, by having the notch on, there's not a noticeable loss. There's more gains from not digging the coke. And I've dug very, very little coke with the Deus Ii, only when I've been digging the 22, 26, you know, real close to what I thought would have been coke anyway. So you can have the notch on if you want. Silencer, I have at 0. I have been using it at 0. The more open you've got it, the more chance you... This is what the silencer is. It's like a discrimination within discrimination. If you've got... Hold on. Let me use that, the dog ball. And let me... Just use that for demonstration purposes. So, there's your... I'll use my ring for demonstration purposes. Say if you've got the silencer on, I don't even know what it goes up to because I never go to the top end. I think it goes up to sort of 5 or something. If you've got your silencer maxed out, you will eliminate you eliminate iron. But this gold ring, you won't see because it's the bigger mass of iron is eliminated, which will eliminate anything close to that big mass. Yeah. So say if it's like 2 inches away from that, it will, because it's eliminating that big mass, the silencer is, it will eliminate the small target as well. Even if you put your reactivity right up, the silencer will mask it out. The lower you put your silencer, even if that's an inch away or half inch away, it will hear, you'll get that burp beep, a mixed tone target. So you'll hear, and you have to listen for this when you're in the field. If you get a target that sounds like a multi-tone, like there's 2 tones in it, and I've had this a lot with the Deus Ii, it is the iron in the hole, but you're also getting a little signal off the good target as well. But that's from having the silencer right down at 0. So it will eliminate, it will get confused. By having the silencer right down, you're more likely to get tricked by the big iron, but you'll definitely hear that gold ring next to it. So there's your trade-off. All the way up at the maximum silencer, you're not going to hear the big iron, but you're going to lose that. Trade-off is, put it all the way down to 0, you're going to hear the big iron, probably come through in the 90s, and you're also going to hear the small ring coming in, say 60s. Beep, 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 beep. You're 2 different targets. So, trade-off is, you can dig more iron. Put your silencer at 1 or 2, this is going to sound a bit iffy. You know, crackling iron, and you'd normally dig it. You would normally ignore it because the silencer is set just right to ignore the iron. But this at 2, you're 50-50. You might get the ring close. It might have to be about 4 inches away, 3 inches. You know, it's just an example. So that's what your silencer's doing. It's opening up the masking feature, so you can get the good targets next to iron. The higher it goes up, you're going to ignore that, but you'll ignore that. The lower it is, you're going to see that, but you'll see that. In between, so it's a balancing act. Hopefully that's giving you a bit of an understanding of what the silencer is. It's an unmasking feature. It helps you unmask the small targets next to iron. Have it you could use it halfway until you get used to it, and then start dropping it and dropping it. I like to have mine at 0 or 1. Especially in the pro settings when you're trying to sniff out. You think you've got, on a Roman site, a medieval site, something, especially Roman, you've got a bed of nails, which is going to be, if you're having the silencer on 5, you're going to mask them nails out. So you wouldn't even know you're in the area. But if you've got this little tiny, if you get a nail there and a nail there and there's a coin there, you're going to struggle like mad, even if that coin's 1.5 inches below the iron. Especially if your silencer's up higher. You put your silencer down and you've got a bed of nails, instead of it masking all that iron, it's going to open it up a bit. You're going to hear a few chirps off the iron, but when you get the Roman coin in amongst that iron, it's going to sing through. Beep, 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 beep. All the iron will be like beep, 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 stuttering like I was then. But when you go over that Roman coin, you are going to know it's there. Silencer low, trust me. Sensitivity about 95. Adjust that to suit the ground that you're on. If it's chirping away or your targets are getting a bit muffled, just drop your sensitivity down a little bit. Frequency shift. You can do it manually. You're out in the field. You go into frequency shift, push the plus or minus button to do a frequency shift, which is to help eliminate EMI or interference from other metal detectors close by. But you can do a quick frequency shift, noise cancel, whatever you want to call it. When you're in the main detecting screen, just hold your finger on the top right button. I'll show you that in a minute. But that will, when you're detecting, you're getting a bit of EMI coming over, hold your finger on the top right button for about 4 seconds and it will do an automatic scan for you, which is an absolutely brilliant quick feature. So that's frequency shift. Iron volume is the volume of your iron, as simple as that. If you got, with these settings, it's not that important because it's 5-tone and I've made the iron come through and there's hardly any discrimination, so you're not going to hear much with the iron volume anyway. Only say if you've brought it from -6.4 up to 3, that little segment that you've changed is what's going to give you an iron tone, if that makes sense. It does make sense to me, and it is what happens. So yeah, the only time that you would hear the iron tone, if you had the iron volume up on iron, is if you had your disc set to up to 8. But you can slow your processing of the machine down a little bit. Reactivity. We all know what reactivity does. I think everyone knows that now. This is the reactivity of your machine as you go over targets. How quick it is to go beep, 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 beep. If you've got a fast reactivity all the way up, it's going to go on all them different targets, which is brilliant. If you've got it all the way down, if you go back a sec, if you've got your activity all the way up, it's going to go on all them different targets, but you're not going to get the depth because you've traded off again. It's all about trade-offs. You've traded the depth off for the speed to get in amongst the targets like you would on a Roman sort of thing. If you've got your activity the other way down and you've got it at 0, which it goes to 0 on the dais, you're going to get there could be 10 targets there and you're going to get beep, beep, beep. You're not going to hear every one of them targets because it's not fast enough to deal with it in the reactivity of 0. This is 2 ends of the scale. But at 0, where you would have got, say, 9 inches depth on a coin with the fastest reactivity, now you're going to get like 15 inches, 16 inches or whatever on the lower reactivity. So the trade-off is recovery speed of targets. The lower the reactivity, the deeper; the higher the reactivity, the faster. You have to balance it out to suit. So 2.5 is a good. It's still rapid. That is 2.5. That's a good one to start with, and then you adjust the settings to suit the field. I wouldn't really go above 4. Don't think you need to go above 4 because the Deus 2 and the Deus 1 is rapid fire anyway. So I'd have that at 2.5. Audio response of 6. I would have had it about 4 or 5. 5 is quite high on the Deus 1. You have to tweak. It depends on the field. If your machine's doing mixed signals again, you drop your audio response a little bit, because what the audio response is doing is, if you have it on 0, what's it go up to 7? I think. If you have it on 0, it's going to get a good signal to about 6. It's only a demonstration. To about 6 inches, beep 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 beep, and from 6 inches down to 12 inches, so it's beep 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 beep. It will fade off. Yeah, so on 0 it fades off quicker. You get a better idea of depth. If you've got your response all the way up, all of that signal, apart from the last inch, like on the Equinox, it's going to go ba 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 ba. So at depth, it's just going to scream out, yeah. So I like to run the reactivity quite high, the audio response quite high, because you've got more chance of digging the deep targets because they're standing out a lot easier. But you could use that again in a different scenario where you wanted to only dig the deep targets. So you could put your reactivity down, your audio response down to about 3, and you'll get a better fade off on the deep targets. So you don't want to dig all the, say it's been green wasted on that day and it's just been spread and there's green waste all on the top. You can think, oh, I ain't digging nothing on the top. Or on a park would be a good idea as well. You only want to dig everything below the trash. You could put your audio response lower and only dig them, the faint signals. Doesn't matter what number, like, but you're listening for that faint signal and you know the trash is there, you're digging something that's down here, away from the trash at the top. So that's what audio response is. Right then, got discrimination, done all that, so that's all them settings. Grain balance. This is a thing with grain balance, in my head, how I would do it. The good thing about the Deus Ii is you've got a reading of your ground mineralisation on the right hand side. You don't need to do a grain balance unless that's dropping and showing that there's a lot of mineralisation in the area. Because by doing, if you do a grain balance where it's not needed and you're accidentally grain balancing over some mineralisation, some pottery, it can bring your grain balance levels right down where it shouldn't be, and then that can affect your detecting on what should be a higher grain balance setting. So if you're, you know what I mean, if you've accidentally grain balance on a target that's brought your grain balance right down and the grain's not that bad and it should be higher, set at about 89, you could lose some small targets and stuff like that. So my opinion, it might not be right, but my opinion is you don't need to do a grain balance on the Deus Ii unless the machine's telling you the grain's mineralised, which will get a reading on the right hand side of the screen. If that goes below 82, 80, then maybe do a grain balance, but otherwise I'd leave it. So that's grain balance. You've got your tracking. Don't use tracking. I never recommend tracking unless you're maybe in Australia or something like that, looking for gold. You might have to use it then. I don't know, but I would never use tracking in the UK. And then your ground stability. The ground stability is stabilising your machine to cope with the mineralisation or the conductivity of the ground. If you have it all the way up, you could start losing some of the deep targets. If you have it all the way at 1, you're going to get the deeper targets, but your machine's going to perform more erratic. So ideally you want to run that as ideally you want to be running it at 1, but if your machine can't cope with the ground, because a lot of machines don't normally have this feature, this is an added feature which is giving you, the user, even more performance. So leave it at 2 for normal. If your machine's performing lovely and it's nice and stable, drop that down to 1. Get a little bit more depth on it. It'll make the deep targets pop out a little bit easier. But you've also got the feature, if you're going along and your ground's driving you mad and you notice the mineralisation and stuff like that, you can put it up to 3. Yeah, you might lose a bit of depth on the tiny targets and stuff, but you're going to have a more enjoyable search, and if you're enjoying yourself, you've got more chance of finding the goodies. So that's that, and then you've got the options button. In the options you've got audio. I like to set the audio to where is it? Square. Square is a more of a ooh signal, and then you've got PWM, which is the Deus tones. So you can have it just like the Deus 1, or you can have it so the signals pop a bit better with a bit of a flutier signal. I like to use the square. You've got your audio out, which is your different audio options that you've set up on the Deus. You've got the bone conductors, which I've just got off Regtons, which are looking very nice. You've got your WS6s, and you've got your plug-in ones, and you know, and you can adjust all the different tones, all the volumes, and you can adjust all the volumes on them, I would suggest that you have everything else turned down apart from the headphones or the device that you're using. Otherwise you're going to waste battery for no reason. Okay, Equalizer. Equalizer, you adjust that to suit you. It's just to boost some of the audio if you want to. I've set mine quite high because I like everything to be popping out loud, but that's just your personal preference. But that is everything on the Deus Ii and my new settings. Show you the settings now. Nice and simple. The main thing what I find makes a difference is the way the tone breaks are set. So first thing is it's based off program 2 sensitive. Yeah, so you would go into that program and these are the adjustments that you'll make. Okay, so push menu into the disc, push expert, top left. Go down to 5 tones while using the plus and minus buttons. 5 tones, then click expert. Okay, so that's your tone breaks and your pitches. At the minute it's at minus 4.3, my discrimination. So you'll set your first tone break. This is your tone pitch and your tone break. The tone pitch is at 100 and the tone break you adjust to suit. Minus 6.4 is where I'd probably use it and then adjust that then to suit the grain like I just said in the video. But if you want to leave it at minus, if you want to set it at minus 4.2 and see how you get on from there. Okay, so minus 4.2 and a tone pitch of 100. Top left button to the next tone, which is your iron tone now. It's at tone of 150 and the tone break is at 0.8. Yeah, tone break 0.8. Go down to the next one, tone 3. It's a tone pitch of 450 and it goes from 0.8 to 36, which is all your small stuff. Your coke will come in there as well and you can set your notch to suit that. So yeah, from 0.8 to 36 with a tone pitch of 450 and then go to the next one. To go from the tone break and tone pitch, you push that middle button, look, see it highlights. So change the tone, then go to the tone break and change that. Okay, go down to the next one. Tone 4 is 665. So from 36 to 75, you've got a tone pitch of 665, and from 75 to 99, you've got the tone pitch of 853. That is the tones and tone breaks. Bottle caps, put at 0. Notch, you can have, if you want, from 23 to 25. On a noisy site where there's a lot of coke, it just keeps your machine nice and stable. If you're going across and there's not a lot of coke in the field, you can turn your notching off if you want. Silencer 0. You can. I use it in 0. This is my program at 0, and I adjust it in the field to suit. So 0 or 1, and then we've gone back to tones. So let's come out of that. Right, and sensitivity. You adjust that to suit the field again. You can have that set 97, 98. Depends how noisy it is. If it's really noisy, again, go the other way, drop it down a little bit. You're still going to get decent depth. Frequency shift. I will show you what I was on about now. You can go into frequency shift and manually adjust that to suit. Or you can just hold the top right button and that will do an automatic scan of the different frequencies that it needs to find to get a stable running machine. Okay, so go back into that, so frequency shift. Iron volume 3, not too loud, not too quiet. You know the iron's present. It's about right, that is 3. But again, you can adjust that to suit your ears. Reactivity 2.5. That is what I would use to start with in the field, and I would adjust that to suit. If it's quite quiet, I can then lower the reactivity to get a bit more depth. If it's quite noisy, I can up the reactivity. Audio response, exactly like I've said in the video, you can adjust that to suit. I won't go over all that again. I'm using about 5 or 6, depending on how noisy the ground is. The less noisy or less EMI, you can up that, so you can get some of them little squeakers, the little tiny targets banging in a bit easier. And then back to the discrimination, which is what we've done. Back out, go into GB, tap it once. Don't use tracking, ground stabilisation. Have it at 2, which is the middle setting. And if it's quite quiet and you want to get a bit deeper, you can go down for ground stability of 1, or if you want to go the other way, put it up to 3. But you'd probably be fine leaving it at 2 for most of your searching. And then we've got the options, audio. So you push select. On all of your other devices, turn it down to 0. So you push the top left button to cycle through. There's your speaker from the module. There's your plug-in bone conductor headphones, your normal plug-in headphones, and there's your wireless headphones. I have mine at 9. Have that however you want. Gives you a warning there that it's going to be very loud, and it will be very loud. Go down to Equalizer, select. That's how I have mine, but I like it to be quite loud, so everything pops out at me, but you can adjust that to suit you again. And that is all of the settings. There's some people like to use the zoom. Let me back out. I don't use the zoom or the XY screen. I don't use it. It's in settings, select, go down to profile, and you push plus or minus then. The XY screen. XY screen, that's when you've got the wiggly line in the centre, which is good for identifying coat, but you don't need to worry about that now with the notching capabilities. But if you do like to use the XY screen, just go onto that and then back out, and it will be on the XY screen. But you've got the zoom feature, which is simple to do. Go into zoom. If you've got that at 1, you're just going to have a little wiggle in the middle of the screen. Even if it's not quite shallow, it's not going to give much of an ID. As you zoom in, you go all the way up to 10. If you've got a target very, very deep, that's normally just a little wiggle. You can zoom in onto that target, and the deep targets then will give you a bit more of a easier identification. But personally, I don't use the zoom. I don't use the XY screen. I like to use my ears. If it sounds good, dig it. Simple as that. I've got to turn that back off now. I don't want that on there. XY, back to the horseshoe. That is it. That's how simple it is. Sid Pro, put it into your Deus 2, give it a try. It works well for me. It might not work for you, but I'm sure it will. Best of luck. Let me know how you get on. Happy hunting, peeps. Enjoy it. Enjoy.